Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN. Today, we are going to be reviewing the 5 KvK groups for the other Gen 2 kingdoms that went into Calling of Courage. That is SOS 1, 53, 54, 55, 56, and 57. 58 and 59 have more than 4 kingdoms in them. So just like we did with Winners Upon Us, I'm going to highlight these ones for the ones that have 4 kingdoms in them exactly, just like we did for Winners Upon Us, where they had 6 kingdoms in them. And then we slowly started working on plugging all the numbers for the ones that had 7 or more. Again, I will be updating the sheet as well. So for those of you that do want to access, I've been seeing a number of people coming and viewing the sheet as well. Eventually, once I get an updated scan from Fuzzy, I will go ahead and add more of those advanced stats to that as well, hopefully before the Zone 2s open if we are able. But if you do want to get access to that, all you got to do is just join the Discord. Link to that in the pinned comment description down below. Once you join the Discord, you will head over to reaction roles. You're going to select Call the Dragons right here. You'll scroll down to where it says COD Data Stats here on the Call the Dragons category, and it's going to be the top link, or this link right here for number 1 on temp stats. Just bookmark it, save it, favorite it. You can kind of tune into it whenever you would like. All right, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and do some intros. So again, I think I've already ported this over to the public version of the sheet, but maybe not everything. I ended up pulling this on the 18th. So I think this was last night. So sorry, 17th actually. Well, I guess technically the 18th probably have to reset for the power for the kingdoms, right? Which again, as long as if they had an alliance at 1 billion power over, we just did a sum total and added those up. And then I pulled 60 million, 100 million, and 200 million plus for the groups. I also reached out to the management teams, at least one person or more from them, from some, if not up to all the kingdoms, and asked what the matchups were. These are the matchups that I was told right now. Again, if it isn't 100%, or if it isn't accurate, or if maybe there's some updates that happened, just please feel free to let me know. I will go ahead and update the sheet. Just holler at your boy in a DM. Okie dokie. And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because I've said a lot. Thanks. Okay, here we go. So the first matchup we have is going to be in SOS 153. This is IR, FA, going up against Soul and RK. So it's 193.80 versus 116 and Kingdom 3. Now, RK got the 3% damage buff. Soul got the CP recovery. FA got the 2% damage buff, and then 1% for IR. I am not sure what everyone else got. So if you are in one of those kingdoms and you want to let me know where you guys place, I was trying to gather all of this before reset, went in finishing BOW, and I was only able to get one, which was the SOS 153 group. But this is how the numbers look. So we got about a plus 3.5 billion in favor of the blue team here, which is Soul and RK. If we look at the total T5 numbers from 60 million plus, we see there's 294 to 310. That's actually not that bad, right? It's 16 differential. That's in favor of the red team, but again, they have more power. And then you have a 96 to 97 on 100 mils, right? So only one. Again, you could say that there is I'd say slight advantage in favor of the red team here, but not to anything of where I would say, oh, this is incredibly overwhelming. Like, I would say this is still slightly balanced. Like, this is decently balanced, probably more appropriately. But again, we have to kind of acknowledge what it is. I have a note on here too as well. So last update I got on here is that the matchup may change after Zone 2, and that most of Zoo in a 116 either has migrated out or will be migrating out. That's what I had heard. So again, if that's the case or not, right, that's what I was told by one of the management reps from one of the kingdoms that I spoke to. So it's interesting that they kind of opted for this. So, and this is something that we've been seeing in other KvK groups, especially for Winners Upon Us, where I believe there's at least 2 that have stated, listen, we're going to do this matchup for up to the FZ. And then once we get to the FZ, we are going to look at the performance of all the kingdoms and potentially switch up, not swatch up, the matchups. And so this seems to be possibly what they may consider doing. Next one we have is 54. So this is actually a 1v3. So it is YY's kingdom, right? So second strongest player in the game, probably eventually will be the strongest player, is probably the strongest if you just added up both his accounts. But we have Oa going up against RP, ROD, BB. So it's 314 versus 255, 75, 45. If we look at the numbers, it's basically double their power. If we look at the T5s and the 100 mil pluses, you're at, gosh, what seems to be 280, 275, maybe, if I have some decent, if my math is somewhat mathing. So about 275 more. So that's, again, like a 3-to-1, nearly a 3-to-1 in favor of the T5s. However, on the 100 mil pluses, there is 91 to 88. More importantly, there is 10 players at 200 mil plus versus the other kingdoms not having anyone above 200 mil plus, right? So, to be honest, I actually applaud OO for taking the 1v3 here, because I think when you look at everything, regardless of who teamed up with who, even if you had the team that had the least amount of T5s and 100 mil pluses and maybe power, and you paired them with 314, it still would be pretty very imbalanced, is probably the best way to really put it. So the 1v3 is really the only way that at least this matchup makes sense. And I'll say something about this near the end too as well, as long as I remember. In 55, we have essentially a free-for-all. Now, it was stated that this was confirmed to be a free-for-all, is that someone had mentioned, one of the management peeps from one of the kingdoms said that, well, there was like some 2v2s being floated around, but they said at least one of the 2v2s, which may have been the front runner matchup, essentially would have been unfair. Now, I don't know how the other kingdoms feel about it. That was just something that one person mentioned. But in this free-for-all, this is where we stand at the moment. So if you're looking at power, Block obviously comes in as the top kingdom based on power. They have the most amount of T5s. However, X, which is also coincidentally the weakest kingdom just based on power, they have the most amount of 100 mil pluses, right? They have double that of anyone else and more than 3 times that of Block. So again, I think this is going to be interesting on how this one plays out. Will the free-for-all stay intact? That's something to see. Obviously, it won't really impact the Zone 2s and the Zone 3s up until we get to FZ, right, where you get to really see, well, okay, is everyone going to abide by the free-for-all or not? I think that, to me, is more of the storyline once you see how that plays out. Then we get to 56. Here, this is a 2v2, so it's ST, MBH versus Ham and Rock. Should be stated, and I actually really like this, one of the people updated me on this, oh yeah, I'm going to add this in real quick, is that they said that in this KvK, which is nice to see because I think this is like the second or third KvK group in this pool that has opted to do a no Bastion play. This is becoming more prominent, and I'm really excited to see this happening. And I only say that because it seems as though there is some high value that's being placed on the fact that players really want to have more emphasis on the open field and just have their feelings for how they do feel about the Bastions and how they can delay, how they can slow up, how they can kind of, from what I've heard from some people, like just soak some of the fun out. Now, again, they are going to be making updates and changes to those, and I can't remember if they have already taken place from the last update, but I believe, oh gosh, now I'm thinking it is going to happen later, that it hasn't happened yet. So someone I'm sure will correct me on that. My mind's a little foggy at the moment. But we do know that there have been some adjustments they've made or are planned to be making based on feedback from the Kings and Queens in that Hall of Kings group chat that's on the official Discord. So that, I think, is something that will still be good to see how that plays out before maybe we completely rule out the like, hey, we're just no Bastion playing it all over. But the fact that some of these KvK groups are taking it into their own hands has to be a telltale of how do they feel about the current feature and mechanic in the game. So again, I'm happy to see that some of the KvK groups are realizing that you control the KvK. You don't have to play the KvK the way that the game is designing it to play for you. Play it for what makes sense for you and for what, most importantly, is going to give your season, your players, and all the kingdoms the most amount of fun, the most amount of enjoyment, and the most amount of PvP that they can get out of that run. Okay, so the matchup here, 14.5, 18.6. So you're looking at about a 4 billion power differential. We look at the T5 numbers, it's plus 13 in favor of the 289, 279 side. But then you got a plus 16, 100 mil pluses in favor of their side as well. This actually, I like this because you have about 4 billion more power on one side. You have a little bit of T5s, which isn't that massive. Obviously, having 4 times more 100 mil pluses, yeah, I would almost argue and maybe potentially still give maybe, even if it's just the slightest advantage to the 289, 279 side. But I still think this is pretty darn close of a matchup. And obviously, we'll have to see how things play out. Okay. Also, they've mentioned no rallies in this KvK, and they're doing a free-for-all as well. So it's just, or sorry, not free-for-all now. That was the previous one. I said fight 24/7. Got to read those. So essentially fighting 24/7. No free rewards are going to be given. And like I said, no bastions, no rallies. And then we get to the last matchup, which is a free-for-all. So, or at least it's stated that it may be a free-for-all. I think I had asked someone in one of the management, and they said that from what they knew, what their last update was, is that it was expected to be a free-for-all. Again, if it's not, just please feel free to update me, and then I'll update the sheet as well, and when I end up covering it again. But as of now, this is how I'll just cover it as such. In this case, right, each of the kingdoms are going to go up against themselves. You have the strongest one being GF. They also have the most amount of T5s, 51, compared to the mid-30s for the others. And then the kingdom that has the most amount of 100 mil pluses, 66, being ANCS. And then obviously with GF, they're at 8. So we'll see how this one plays out. Again, is it going to be similar to the other group that we mentioned, right, with the Sura X, RSY, and Block? Will they actually end up playing the true free-for-all all the way out through each of the zones up until the FZ, right? That will to be determined. Obviously, we'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the matchups. If you're in any of these groups, you know, do you agree with how the Diplo went? Are you looking forward to the season? Do you feel like, it got slided a little bit? I would have liked to see a different matchup here. Let me know what you guys are thinking down there in the comments below. That's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.